Okay. All right. So I think it's a good time to just start, and maybe people can join us as they come in. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining, actually taking out time from your day to attend a webinar. My name is Jincy George. I am a consultant with Arya Consulting, as you would know. And why this complimentary webinar? We are celebrating 30 years of our existence as an organization this year. So we were formerly called Carswell Partners, but now we are called Arya, as you know. We just had a name change last year in September. Don't know if you know. So now I think it's safe to say we've gotten used to the new name. So we are celebrating our 30 years, and we decided that to celebrate 30 years, we want to do a couple of things. And one of them was to connect with our folks outside with in the form of this kind of webinar. So we plan to do more in the year, but we thought it would be great to start with this webinar titled 2020: How to Excel as a Leader in the New Decade. So while decade I feel is a little bit of a tall claim, because I don't know whether we can really be prepared for another 10 years because of how quickly things are changing and moving. I think, but the idea is to discuss how leadership has changed, and what we as leaders need to be prepared for as we go into this new decade, at least. Um, and obviously 2020 is a play on 2020 vision, and I'm sure most of you must have caught it. Did you guys catch that? Did you catch the whole 2020 vision thing in the title?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we have a smart audience. Thank you. So that's the play there. Okay. So I have been with Arya for about a year now. I come with a decade of learning and development and organizational behavior experience. I have worked with IT organizations, with healthcare organizations, and now I find myself in consulting, and I'm really enjoying my role here. And one of the things I do as part of being a learning and development um, specialist of sorts is doing sessions and webinars and workshops. So, which is why I'm facilitating today. Um, uh, so let's start and let's look at why we've gathered today. So my first question to all of you as to why you chose to attend this webinar. My first question to you is, what changed in the world of work that you think you want to know what leadership behaviors to bring? So what changes, what demands of the current organizational environment made you think about your role as a leader, made you think about, does my behavior need to change? Do I need to bring in something else to the table, given the way the world looks today? So what did you see? What changes did you see? So maybe you can use the chat window if you don't wish to talk. If you wish to talk, it'll be great to just hear you share your ideas.
This is Karen. I would say that you touched on it, the speed of change. So something that ends up being a byproduct or kind of falls out from the speed of change is forgetting the human element often.
Mm-hmm.
And I see myself in a role as a leader here, as someone who can positively influence our organization. And when people feel forgotten in the throes of change, they tend to tell me about it. So that's where I'm coming from.
That's wonderful. Actually, you did touch parts of where we are going to go today, which is what happens to the people element of change, right? And how do they get affected? And it's good to be prepared for that piece of change. So thanks for sharing, Karen. We have Eileen, who says, my company went from being private to publicly funded. And that's a big change for an organization too. So that whole investment decision and how that impacts you as a leader, that's amazing. Sarah says, managing multi-generations in the workforce. You guys already know half of my webinar, so thank you very much for joining. We'll see you some other day. So yes, so multi-generations in the workforce, it's such a topic that everybody is discussing today. I tend to, have a lot of clients asking me to come and present something on it, and how do you manage multiple generations in the workforce. So that's definitely a trending topic. Nora says, we are going through a leadership change. So that's the major factor. How do I fit into the new structure? How can I share with the other leaders? Also, healthcare is going through a major state of change. Absolutely. Yeah. We recently had a lot of ladies join us for a session here, and all of them spoke about healthcare being in such a tumultuous state right now. And what do you do with that kind of a speed of change? So, I mean, great responses. I think, you're all here for the right reasons, which is how do you really manage how the world of work is changing today? There are different generations that come to work. There is, the speed at which things are changing is breakneck. Um, how many of you think digitalization is also affecting you? How many of you think technology is certainly something that you need to keep up with? Yes, I have Karen who raised her hand. Anyone else who feels that, yeah, this whole move towards embracing technology has really affected and changed the world of work as you know it? Okay, I see a couple of them saying yes, yes. Yeah, I mean, in this morning I was reading on LinkedIn. This morning I was reading about how Amazon has. Oh, we have Robert who says slowly in agriculture. So in agriculture, you see technology, coming in, embedding itself. Yes, thanks, Robert. So, Robert, I am unmuting you, and you can also talk in case that's comfortable for you. So there is digitalization, and we can not say no to it. I was talking about this morning, I saw on LinkedIn that Amazon has started its own, a new business. And what is this new business? The new business, did any one of you come across that article? Am I preaching to the choir? No, okay. The new business that Amazon has found itself in now is that they are automating the whole idea of checkouts in a grocery store, right? So when you come into a store, you would actually use your credit card to swipe in and come into the store. And as you pick items, they are all somehow linked to your credit card. So you are billing as you pick stuff, and when you walk out of the store, you again use your credit card when you go out of the store, and you get charged for whatever you picked from the store. So, you know that's amazing. Like, there wouldn't be those long checkout lines. There A lot of people who now have a job at the till will also lose their jobs. So it's a huge, it's a big, question mark. As in, I mean, where are we headed? How is technology changing the way we are, looking at work? So digitalization is a reality that none of us can say no to or hide away from. So that's happening. There's huge competition, and competition from startup organizations, because startups are so flexible and so much more quicker than big giants as organizations, right? Even the world of healthcare is changing, because there are these disruptors out there who are thinking of how can I bring the hospital to the person instead of the person going to the hospital. So there are those new upcoming ideas out there that are actually changing the world of work. Then there is the breakneck speed and agility that all of you spoke about, right? We've now become a publicly funded organization. Healthcare is changing. My world of leaders is changing, and we have a new suite of leaders. So there is that. And then there is the workforce, which one of you said, right? These different generations that are coming together in the workforce. And then there is the associated tension, the associated struggles of getting them to work along with each other, to collaborate. So that's the next one. So I believe these four stand out as the major reasons why the world of work is changing today. And as leaders, we need to be prepared for these changes. Now, at ARIA, we don't believe in doing workshops or webinars or anything that we do here. We actually don't just go by, management preaching, right? We don't do that. We kind of try to marry scientific information, data, with our own experience as a consulting firm that's been around for 30 years. So we try to marry both of them. So today's webinar also, I just didn't want to read a bunch of things and watch a bunch of things and come and just give the information you already have. The idea was, what do we have statistically to tell us what we should be focusing on as leaders? So here's what I found, and it is a great study. And the study was conducted by MIT Sloan Management, and they did the study along with Cognizant. The study was done in 2019, so it's not data borrowed from, let's say, some old book written in early 2000s. So this is a study from 2019. It's called the New Leadership Playbook for the Digital Age. And I really like the word playbook because we do need one at the moment with the kind of changes that are being thrown at us. And they studied in this particular report, they actually draw from about 4,300 leaders across the world. So what they said as they were interviewed, there were 27 executive leaders that were interviewed. They actually went across 120 countries, and there were about multiple focus group discussions that were done as part of this particular study. So I thought that is a valid place to go to really understand what we need to do as leaders. So has anyone come across this study before, has seen it mentioned anywhere? You can use the chat window or raise your hands or just talk. Okay, so I have someone in the chat window saying not me. Okay. All right. So not many of you've come across. So I mean, I will try and definitely I will send it to you after this. I'll send you a link to reading kind of a synopsis of the study. The study itself needs to be bought off of MIT. So I will share a link with you. But so I'm going to use parts of the study, and I'm also going to use part of our own experiences as a firm to help all of us understand what our behaviors need to look like as leaders. So So here's the first thing the study pointed out. What are things that are affecting leadership in the next decade? The first one was leaders aren't really prepared to lead in a digital economy. How many of you would agree with that? So either you can select raising your hand as an option, or just let me know in the chat window. How many of you would agree to leaders aren't prepared to lead in a digital world? Okay, I have a couple of you who've raised your hands, so thanks for that. So the study found out that about 70% people said, yeah, I think I am ready to lead in a digital world. But when they were really asked, are you ready to make analytics driven decisions? Are you ready to change the way you do learning in your organizations and switch to machine learning? Are you ready to rethink performance management and think of it as an ongoing process, and actually use mobile apps to actually record people's feedback and people's ratings? Would you be okay to adopt something like this? A lot of leaders said no. So the percentage of leaders who are actually prepared to actually go into a digital world was very low. The second thing the study actually found was, how many times did I say actually? The second thing the study found was is found affecting leaders was strategic, cultural, human capital, and personal blind spots. So I'll talk about it a little bit more in a while, but these four things and blind spots that leadership has when it comes to these four important things, and we'll talk about it in a minute. And the third thing the study found was how this new world of work, and somebody did talk about this before, it threatens trust in an organization. So I think it was either Karen or Eileen who spoke about, yeah, we are moving with a lot of speed, but what happens to the people element when we move with speed and when there are changes? It was Karen. Yes, thanks, Karen. How do we really manage trust? And that equation is being threatened at the moment. So those three are the glaring things that are glaring at us as leaders, and that those are the things we need to be prepared for. So now let's just understand this a little bit more. We prepared to go into a digital economy? to be working as leaders in digital economy, and the numbers don't really look great if you look at it. 9% of the interviewees, and that's a really low number, right? Says, our organization already has leaders with the skills we need to thrive in a digital economy. 12% of them say that our leaders have the right mindset to embrace the change of a digital economy. And 13% say our organization is ready to compete in a digital economy. So those are really low numbers. And what the other numbers that I found fascinating was, though 70% folks said, about 80%, I'm wrong, about 80% said that yes, we definitely are going towards a more technology driven business model. Only about 40% of them said that they have a good leadership pipeline. So while we know that we need leaders who are, quick and digitally savvy, we don't really have a pipeline of those leaders waiting to take these roles up. So we are very poorly prepared when it comes to being digitally savvy. In fact, our own experience in our own offices, our own organization has been, there's so much reluctance when we have to adopt a new technology, right? Or it may not be reluctance sometimes. Sometimes we're excited, but we really struggle with, how do you work with this? And we want to constantly go back to our old ways of doing things. So the whole question of, are we really prepared to take on app-based learning or machine-based performance management? Are we really ready to do that? Is a big question. The next one that we spoke about. So sorry. Here, I found this, this quote by Arthur Young. Arthur Young actually works with the Tencent Group. Tencent Group is a multi-million-dollar Chinese holding firm. And he said, I come from HR and I've been a deep specialist in that area, but today most of the important conversations center around technology. If I am going to be a trusted advisor, I need to be in technology conversations. I need to go back and learn my ABCs: AI, big data, and cloud. So here's a HR leader actually saying that if you want to be on the table, you need to be talking technology. So I don't know how much of it really has, how much of digitalization is really affecting each of your workspaces, but how many of you would agree, partially or fully, with Arthur Young here? How many of you would say, yeah, that is true. Conversations are becoming more technology centered. Okay, I have folks raising their hands. I have people in the chat window saying very true. People saying yes in my team. So, so we all agree that that's where we are finding ourselves, not just being great HR people or great, just operational leaders, but leaders who actually can talk technology. So, as we see, digital technology is not going to be now restricted to the CIO's role or the role of a analytics team. It is going to be each one of us. Whatever is our role, we will have to actually look at how will technology take over, and what do I need to be ready to do if it does take over. Okay, so let's go to the next one. And we spoke about strategic blind spots, cultural blind spots, human capital blind spots, and personal blind spots. And what is all of that? So strategic blind spots. Strategic blind spots, the study says, is a leader's failure to grasp the implications of the changes that are coming at them. And sometimes an organizational may have a strategic blind spot. Sometimes a leader themselves may have a strategic blind spot. We've seen organizations actually fail miserably because of a strategic blind spot. One of them, and all of you may have heard of this, which is our Blockbuster versus Netflix. How many of you know that? How many of you know what happened to Blockbuster and Netflix? Yes. So I have Robert raising his hand. I have a couple of you raising your hands. So awesome. Yes, we all know what happened when Blockbuster was not flat-footed enough, was flat-footed and didn't, go as quickly as Redbox did or Netflix did, and move as quickly with change. Toys R Us also went through something like that, right? Dell for some time went through the same issue of, not really moving as fast as, um, even the Chinese counterparts who were taking up profits from the entire technology market by bringing in cheaper technology. So we have Dell, we have Toys R Us, we have Netflix and versus Blockbuster. So many organizations who actually had a strategic blind spot and did not, strategically think, how do I prepare for the next, for what's coming. At the same time, we have organizations like Royal Philips, which used to be a lighting company, but then moved into healthcare and has this huge hold on healthcare business now. They made a strategic decision to see where the world was going. The world is going towards well-being and health, and that's where they went, and they did well. So that's, strategic blind spot. The next kind of blind spot that, the study talks about is a cultural blind spot. Now, cultural blind spot is the idea or the attitude of, this is how we've always done it. How many of you have come across that particular blind spot at work? Yes. So many of you quickly raising your hands. It really does look like something that's affecting many of you. Yes, the idea of, why should we change? And at ARIA, we work with a lot of clients who went from being really small organizations and family-centered organizations to suddenly growing into a big organization. And what's happened with our clients when that happens is, a lot of them get left behind in the move because they don't want to give up this, the comfort of the past and not move forward. So as leaders, if we also exercise that cultural blind spot of, this is how we've done it, there's a danger that we will, get left behind like Blockbuster did, right? The next blind spot was human capital blind spot. Human capital blind spot, and I found what Brian Cardone is saying really, really good, which is, I knew the desk phone was dead. It turns out the desk itself was dead. And he said this because they were trying to hire millennials at work, and they realized that millennials actually don't want to come to work. They're okay if you give them a beanbag at some cafe, but they would still do work for you. It's not like they don't want to work. It's just their world of work is very different from our traditional idea of what work looks like. Similarly, human capital blind spot could be using old and redundant practices when it comes to recruitment. The whole idea of, yeah, I'll put an ad out there, I'll have people coming, and then I'll interview them and hope and pray that I get the right candidate. Are we really moving towards recruitment of the future, which involves assessments, which involve projects and micro projects being done before you join us and things like that? So are we moving that way with human capital in terms of training, recruitment, hiring, even laying off? Are we really thinking of what is the new thing that we need to be doing? And the last one is personal blind spot. And many of you, I don't have to tell you what personal blind spots really are. They are, as we all know, they are our inability to grow, and the idea that we stay stuck in what we think are our competencies, our skill sets, and our attitudes that are going to serve us, but they may not really be serving us. And I think of late, the good news is we have had a lot of clients asking us for emotional intelligence training. Empathy is something people are introducing into their organization, and that's great, because those are ways in which you can work against blind spots that you have as an organization, as people, as leaders, and as organizations. So that's the good news, but again, it still seems to be an issue. And the last one is the whole idea we spoke about of trust when there is change. So like Karen said, when there is speed, is there deliberateness at the same time, right? Are we going too fast? Or are we really taking time to think about, learn from the past mistakes we've made? When we are digitizing everything, are we really thinking about the human element of digitalization? And when we are trying to make money or think of profitable solutions, are we also looking at sustainable solutions? Do we really have that bigger picture, the bigger purpose, behind what we do as organizations and leaders? So that's the other tension that we all as leaders are coming across, and we really need answers to those things as well. It's never either or. It is always has to be together. You have a balanced mix of both. And how do we really do that as leaders? So those are the challenges that the study threw up. Now, the next question you would have is, okay, that's great. Those are challenges. How do I really now prepare myself for what is out there for all of this? And I think, the answer lies in really looking at behaviors, and looking at behaviors that are not serving us, behaviors that will serve us, and they have served us and they will continue to serve us, and the behaviors that we now need to actually focus on and deliberately grow and work on to be the leaders of the next decade. So the MIT study actually gave us these three sections. They called it eroding, enduring, and emerging behavior. So I'll give you a minute to just read this and take a look at each of these buckets. Okay. All right. So any thoughts at this point as you look at this table? Is something standing out to you? Did something boggle your mind? Or did you go, that's absolutely right? Did you have any of those um, reactions to this list here? Okay. What stood out to you in the whole eroding bucket? What stood out to you? The behavior that you were like, yeah, that's right. This is eroding and people should stop displaying this behavior. What stood out to you?
For
Anyone?
for me, it's Karen here. It's the one size fits all approach.
Uh-huh. One size fits all. And do you see people, do you see leaders still using that approach?
Absolutely, and intending to continue to.
Intending to continue to. That's right. Sarah here tells us micromanagement. It's yeah, and continuously I see micromanagement as an issue with leaders, and that whole difficulty of relegating control is so apparent with a lot of leaders today. Anything else that, so well, let's just look at emerging behaviors now. What about the emerging behaviors is um, is making you curious, or you are liking it, or you have a thought about it? No.
Well, it's Karen again. I like the balance between making data-driven decisions
Mm-hmm.
and, and the inclusive approach, or the humility. The human aspect is also in there.
Correct. Yeah. So, thanks for sharing that, Karen. I think where the world of work is headed to is, um, you know, the work now requires leaders who have the humility to know what they don't know. And while they know what they don't know, also leaders who would actually fall back on data when it comes to knowing more and making those decisions. So it has to be that balance of, I'm going to be empathetic and authentic, but I'm also going to use data when I'm making my decisions, and not forget the human side of things. Now, with the Amazon article that I was sharing this, at the beginning with all of you, the whole idea of removing people from the till and not having checkout lanes. I put up a question on LinkedIn today, which is, so loneliness is already an epidemic in today's world. So this, taking away people from the grocery stores, and that short brief conversation you tend to have at the checkout lane, and somebody goes, hi, how are you, how was your day? Oh, good. No, not so good. Oh, it's raining. you know Amazon and this new business actually taking that away, how good is it, right? Or what does it signal to the already deprived world of human connection? What does it signal? So that's the whole point. I be data driven, but also remembering the human aspect of things. Another one that I want to draw everyone's attention to is working across boundaries. Collaboration has become a very, very big ask of all leaders of tomorrow. So, how good are you at reaching outside your own teams and your own boundaries and connecting and networking with other people? So, that's becoming a big quality that organizations are looking for. And also, authenticity and empathy has emerged again and again throughout the interview. How authentic are you? How empathetic and emotionally connected and intelligent are you as leaders? Now, the enduring bucket is very interesting. These are behaviors and skill sets that have stood the test of time, and they will continue to be things that are required of leaders in the coming years. Ability to take risk, ability to lead and manage change, ability to be customer centric, focusing on performance, clear vision. All of those are going to continue to be asks made of leaders. So I'm hoping this gives you kind of a clear, it lays out a clear map of where am I today, what am I needed to get better at. But here's the thing, right? Our leadership challenge is not just adopting some behaviors and a set of competencies. It is actually changing our mindset and changing mindsets of the organizations that we work for, which is we really need to rethink the entire idea of leadership, right? Coronavirus did challenge a lot of our traditional leadership beliefs, which is everybody has to come to work to contribute. Now people are working from home. People have, all meetings have been called off. This is really a test, that for all of us as leaders, I mean, are we going to be comfortable with the idea of people not coming to work? The idea of there are not going to be traditional workspaces and desks and offices. People are probably going to not commute anymore in the new world of work. So that's the challenge. Are we able to really shift our mindset and not just adopt a few behaviors and competencies? So with that, I think we've used up our half an hour. Um, I'm going to take a pause now and then allow for any thoughts, ideas, or questions that you may have as a group. So all of you are unmuted, right? So if you want to just talk and not be using the chat window, that's totally fine. I would love to hear from you. What do you think? As we went through the webinar, what thoughts do you have?
Hi, this is Eileen.
Yes, Eileen.
And just going back to the Amazon model that you mentioned, and the loneliness factor, I think the problem with maybe a younger generation, and the millennials is that want their beanbag chairs is that they don't feel loneliness the same way as older generations do. So they don't, I don't think they understand yet what the difference it's going to make to not have that interaction and things like that. I think it'll hurt their social well-being perhaps, but I'm not sure they feel loneliness the same as maybe my generation would.
Absolutely. So that's a great perspective. Thanks for sharing, Eileen. While they may not feel loneliness, I just feel this whole increasing cases of depression, anxiety, we've not seen these kind of numbers before, right? Even in children who are 7 and 8 years old going through anxiety episodes and depression.
Yeah.
While they may not be realizing it, those are the impacts of alienation, right? I mean,
For sure.
yeah. So I think um, that's where my whole question to organizations as big as Amazon would be, while you are being profit driven, it's a great business model. Once Amazon gets its hands on big grocery chains, they're going to continue to make money for years to come, because the grocery chains would have this model. But my question is, so, but where is your whole, the purpose behind your business, right? Is while it's a good purpose, make it technology efficient, make, don't waste people's times while they stand in a checkout lane. But I mean, where's the balance, right? Where's the balance? That's just the way I see it. And anyone else? So I have someone on the chat window. Yeah, so I have someone saying, thank you, you've given me a lot to think about, Karen. I wonder how we may encourage more emerging and enduring behaviors when we see eroding leadership styles. So let me ask that question to all of you. How do you encourage emerging behaviors when you see eroding behaviors are still very much the trend? What do you think, Chris and Nora and Sarah? How do you really, focus on emerging behaviors and get people to move that way instead of being stuck at eroding behaviors? I believe the answer lies, first of all, the answer lies in awareness. So it needs to start with actually people being aware of what are eroding behaviors, do I still have it? So it starts with awareness. And then I think it's, multiple ways. So there is, what is the role of senior leadership in actually role modeling emerging behavior? So is the senior leadership aware? And are they role modeling emerging behaviors? That will be the first. You can do a lot of training, you can have workshops done, but what's the impact of it unless there is role modeling that is happening? So I think it is to start with awareness, and ways to make people aware is actually, getting them to, come into a room and be aware, like all of you are, right? Now you attended this webinar and you're really thinking about it, and maybe that's the beginning of being aware. Okay, there are these behaviors that are not serving me, and then actually having role models. So I have Nora, who's written, lead by example, give documented proof of how emerging behaviors have a positive impact. Absolutely. And a lot of organizations, since we only had half an hour, but I think there's enough material to do a 3-hour workshop on this, right? Which is, there are so many organizations that have made huge strides when it comes to adopting emerging behaviors. Even this whole idea of radical responsibility, right? Or radical courage, those ideas, that organizations that are now embracing those ideas are actually doing really well. And interestingly, the study shows that organizations that are embracing digitalization very well are also actually organizations who are embracing emerging behaviors very well. So that correlation really baffled me, and it's something to think about. I have Robert saying, yeah, I agree 100%. It has to be supported from the top. That's true. So I believe there's a big role senior leadership has to play when it comes to role modeling emerging behaviors. And also not just role modeling, but what is the accountability element of, those eroding behaviors? So when somebody has eroding behaviors, are we promoting that still? Are we penalizing it? Are we promoting it? Are we coaching for the right behavior in an organization? Coaching is a big change maker. So are we actually introducing coaching as a leader development methodology in our organization to get people to the behaviors we want them to get to? Eileen, that's a long answer to your short question. Eileen, are you there? Sorry.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay. I was just saying that's a long answer to your short question.
Yes, thank you.
All right, I think with that, we come to the end of this webinar. I'm so thankful to all of you who've joined. You know, I mean, some folks are not comfortable asking questions in a social platform. So please feel free to write to me and, you know, send me your question or thoughts. I will leave my email ID on the chat window. It is jincy.george@aria.ca. It was great seeing you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Jincy.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Jincy.
Thank you. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Nora. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Karen.